What is up, guys? Welcome to now the fourth podcast of the Lit Podcast, Last Inning Touchdown. Thank you guys so much. Our last podcast was our most viewed podcast to date. Last time I checked, I believe it got up to like 17 views, and to a lot of you, that's nothing, but to us, that feels pretty good. It feels pretty good to watch the videos get a little bit more viewership each time. So once again, though, I'd like to see some of those viewers turn into subs. So hit that sub button, hit that little bell so you get notified every time we post a new video. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, which is below me right there. Below me. It's below my picture right here. But thank you guys so much. We're having a good time with this. We're having a good time.
I'm having a good time.
Hey. The one thing I did notice that I'm going to make sure doesn't happen is I felt like the last video was kind of quiet. So I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. Maybe that was just me on my end, but when I watched the video, it was kind of quiet. So I'm going to turn it up a little bit this time. Anyways, so on to MLB. This is a little bit old news now because it announced the day we posted our video. Freddie Freeman and Jose Abreu are the MVPs for the 2020 season. I know we got Freddie Freeman right. Did we get Jose Abreu right also?
Oh, I went easy 2 for 2. Yeah.
I had
no play. I was 100% on both.
I think that we got those pretty easily, but it feels like it's been so long now that I can't remember.
I walked into that I was 100% on both, that Jose and Freeman won, and if either of them didn't win, it was a full-on robbery. They were, because you were a little more concerned about Freeman's lack of home runs in the home run world, but every other number he did was just so much better than everybody else.
And I liked Freeman. I just sometimes
Freeman.
I gotta play a little devil's advocate and try and think like the voters might, just to throw a little wrench in there when it's kind of obvious to us.
Yeah.
But the big story that broke today of recording is Robinson Cano getting himself suspended again for the PEDs. I don't know. I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised. And I say that because I'm not surprised because he's already done it. And when you kind of break out and you kind of have like a good season again after being one of these PED guys, it's kind of the first thought that crosses your mind. But then I'm also like surprised, like how many times can you get suspended before you stop doing it? Like that's the part that always surprises me.
Yeah, it was sad. Especially having a bounce back year. I mean, maybe it's because the steroids allowed him to recover a little quicker, day in and day out, but who knows? It sucks for baseball. It sucks for the Mets. It always sucks when anybody, it doesn't matter if it's someone famous or not, gets suspended for steroids, because no matter what, it makes the sport look bad in any sport.
And that's the part that and I really didn't think I was going to get on a little tangent here with steroids, but the part that always throws me off is when a guy like Robinson Cano gets suspended for it. The first thing that crosses my mind is, why did he think he was going to get away with it? And how many people are getting away with it that Robinson Cano thought he would? That's the part that always throws me off, is if a guy like Robinson Cano is getting caught, how many people are not getting caught that makes Robinson Cano say, I'm going to risk it and try it? Yep. That's always the part that's kind of tough. But then there's the side of me that says, I almost don't really want to know and just want to enjoy the sport and kind of just, I don't know. I guess I kind of look at it as it is what it is, and everyone knows that it has side effects. And if you're willing to take that risk of suspension and those side effects, I mean, I get it. I get why they do it. I mean, if you're a borderline career minor leaguer, or this is what pushes you into being a major leaguer, I totally get it. I mean, you go from being nobody to at least a possibility of somebody. I mean, I get it.
One of my examples is when someone got suspended. I think it was like 2013 or 2014. Someone big got suspended. It may have been like Braun or somebody.
I could see.
And my example was, at the time, the Cardinals' top prospect at the time was a young kid named Colton Wong.
Never heard.
And it's like, Colton Wong, top prospect, is looking at all these guys and trying to figure out how to make it in the league and how to take that next step as a player. Like, if all of a sudden he would have taken a steroid, would all of a sudden he have just been like taking this next jump that a guy like Ryan Braun spent years doing? Because Colton Wong he's a freak athlete, still is. Not saying he's one of the best players in baseball, but if you add that extra healing every day maybe that extra, little muscle in there, all of a sudden he maybe becomes a perennial all-star or something. I don't know, and make an extra $50 million. So
I do think that
it's the risk and rewards.
In general, the huge misconception is that steroids make you good at anything.
Oh yeah, no.
I actually worked with somebody that injected steroids at one point in my life. I worked at Domino's with somebody that injected steroids. They do nothing for you unless you are in the gym constantly busting your butt every single day, multiple times a day, hours at a time. It works as hard as you do. You just see the reward a lot more extreme than anyone else would. But you have to work just as hard, and you still have to be good. Steroids don't make me see a fastball. Steroids don't make me hit the curveball. Like
Barry Bonds saw one pitch a game.
Right.
Well, that was anywhere near the strike zone.
He saw 4 pitches a game. They were out of the zone.
Yeah, dude, exactly. That dude was intentionally walked so many times, ridiculous, and he still was, hitting home runs at a record rate day in and day out. And just because he took steroids doesn't mean he didn't barrel a baseball better than literally anyone ever in baseball history, because he got walked more than anyone in history and somehow still hit more home runs than anybody else. I've always been a big fan of the steroids of either let all of them in or let none of them in.
Yeah, that's where it's always tough. That whole conversation.
You have guys like Hank Aaron who were known for taking human growth hormone, but it wasn't tested.
Yeah, and that's what's always tough is because I think that throughout history, I think players in all sports have always taken whatever was the best thing out there for you. And so it's kind of hard to say, like, it's hard to blame them for trying to do what they believe is best. Because, I mean, there weren't that many studies that said this stuff was bad for you for the longest time. And, sometimes people just say, well, you know what, in today's world, so many people get cancers and things like that anyways. So, why not push yourself here and just hope for the best? I mean, I don't know.
Also, the big winner in all this is the Mariners.
Okay. The Mets are paying his contract.
Nope. Mariners saved $4 million today.
Oh, there you go. Well, the Mets, with their new ownership, now have 20-something million off the books for this next year, too.
Yeah, but they're also losing a perennial all-star. The Mariners lost literally nothing, and then they also gained.
Yeah, I mean, personally,
$3.8 million.
I don't think honestly, I don't think the Mets lost anything as far as a position player. I think that Robinson Cano last year, a lot of that performance was probably due to, I mean, you really can't look at the numbers there. It's like the guy has been trending downwards, unhealthy for so many years. And then all of a sudden he's playing every day and batting almost 400. And it's like, and then he tests positive for steroids. It's kind of fishy.
Yeah, but like you said, steroids don't barrel at baseballs.
They don't. But what I'm saying is he went from not playing and not playing well because he wasn't healthy to playing every day and batting, for a long time this year. He was batting like 380. The dude was insane for the first half of this shortened season. But I mean, don't get me wrong, he's still a good player, but I don't think he'll ever sustain and be that good of a player day in and day out. His body can't handle it anymore. And so taking that steroids allowed him to handle it this year is what it seems. I mean, it just seems a little interesting that the best year he's had in a while is the same year that he tests positive. I mean, it just kind of goes hand in hand there. But what is interesting, though, is now the Mets have another large chunk of money this year off the books. They do have to pay him for 2 more years, which I'm not really sure how they got themselves in that. But I think
Mets got them in that?
I'm saying I don't understand how it's just an interesting predicament that the Mets got themselves in is what I'm getting at. They owe.
He just signed a 10-year deal.
Yeah, so I actually have a Mets fan. His name's Falco's here. He does a podcast of his own called 27 Outs. And I like to tweet him, little stuff when things happen in the NL East because he's a Mets fan. I'm a Marlins fan. And I said, so how do you feel about this issue, this thing coming up with Cano? And basically he told me that he loves it because it frees up the money, but also frees up room for like a Jeff McNeil to get more playing time, or some of their prospects in the minor leagues to get some more playing time. on top of more money for free agency. So I definitely think I tend to agree with him there. And I think that probably is the way you got to look at it at this point, because Cano has shown you that he really can't play a full season anymore. The only thing I think they are missing out on is from what I know of it, Cano is a pretty good clubhouse guy, a good clubhouse leader. And so they do lose that. But I do think that this is probably for the better with their club, in my opinion, at least.
I just don't know, man. He's just always been a great baseball player. Been a very, I don't know about defense anymore because he's a really big second baseman, but I believe he's got a Gold Glove in his career. He played, and like you said, last 2 years, 2018, 2019, he missed a lot of games, but literally up until those 2 years, the dude was never hurt. And then this year came out and raked when he was fully healthy. So you can say the fact that, maybe he struggled in 2019 was due to health and less other things. But even when he played half a season in 2018, I'm looking at it now, 303 with a 375 on base. To me, it just seems like that maybe
2018 is also the last time he got suspended. That's when he got his 80-game suspension. So
nice, that's why he only played 80 games. But I just see his stats at 287, 298, 280, 303, and then he had a really down 2019, 256, and then last year he came out and raked again. Do I think he's as good as he was last year? No, because there's like a 5-year gap to show that he was not at the same equivalent as that he was. But I think they're losing something. I mean, it depends on how quickly you want them to win, right? If you're a Met, like he's definitely someone you want playing every day if you're ready to win right now. Yes, it gives guys like Jeff McNeil and other prospects more playing time, but he's a veteran leader in the clubhouse that you're going to want during it if you want to try to make the postseason. So I think it depends. It does free up $24 million over the next couple of years, though. So
it's only this year. They still owe him 24 for next year and the following year.
No, I know, but it's still $24 million. Yeah. You can sign.
Yes.
You can sign one guy 3 years, $24 million just based on that contract, and an $8 million guy in baseball is a pretty big time play.
I think that's going to be. I think that's going to be a big kicker because you've got a new ownership that probably wants to spend money anyways, and now they just said, "Well, here's free money because we were going to pay this guy anyways."
That's a very good everyday starter at $8 million. Matt Carpenter made like $8 million for like 8 years, and he was a stud for like 7 of them. So you can get a really good.
And I think another way to look at it too is, let's say that they were looking at a JT Realmuto, and let's say that maybe they were like, "Man, that 1 year at the end of his contract, maybe he wants 5, and we only wanted to give him 4." Well, now you're saying, well, you could look at that first year as pretty much free because we were going to pay Cano anyways. And so now you're like, well, who cares if I pay him at the end when I didn't want to? So maybe they give somebody an extra year who they were going to sign that they were kind of on the verge about signing. Maybe they get them because they can give them that extra year because they look at this year as kind of like free.
I mean, it's kind of like it could be like, it could really be, it can be a blessing or, just a total negative, either way you look at it. But depending on how you feel like looking at it. But I mean, they could do kind of what in a different way with signing free agents as kind of the Colts did when Manning got hurt and they were drafting Luck. Is the Colts were pretty close to being pretty good at football, but then Manning got hurt and had neck surgery, and then obviously in a quarterback-driven league, they lost a lot of games. At 1-15, they let Manning go and drafted a very good young quarterback in Andrew Luck, who then came in and won 11 games in his first year because they were very close. They weren't like most number 1 overall picks. So just like I said, in the Mets, not saying baseball draft picks matter, but that's what you're saying, like a couple extra guys, a couple extra $5 million guys, or one extra $8 million guy over the next couple of years, or go make a big splash for JT because you saved some money, all of a sudden put you over the hump.
The other thing is to think about too. I mean, with the National League, if they add a DH, well, that's an extra position player that you may not have been expecting to pay. Well, now you freed up money to get another guy that can slot into that kind of role for you too.
JD Martinez.
So that's what's kind of nice there is it's basically free money for an ownership that wants to spend money. And I think that's going to play pretty largely here.
Yeah, that's a big deal because it's not like they're a team that doesn't want to spend money. The Mets want to spend money. So this $24 million is a big deal. You save the Cardinals $24 million, they're probably going to do nothing because they're boring and I hate life. But you save the Mets $24 million, they're going to go spend that $24 million elsewhere. They're like,
especially this year.
Exactly. They were like, this is what we want to spend. It's like, oh, now we have $24 million off the books. I'm still spending that $24 million on other players. So you get 3 $8 million guys, and there you go. But if you're the Mets, last year they signed Walker and Porcello for $19 million total. So who knows what the hell they do.
Yeah, and which, oof, not a big fan of those signings, anyways. But
They were terrible.
yeah, absolutely.
Walk at a 5.5 ERA, and they signed him for a $9 million.
The Mets, unfortunately, I feel like have spent money in pretty dumb places over the last
always
5-10 years.
Anyways,
the other so the thing I almost forgot about here, and luckily I did a quick MLB.com type in to look at the latest news, because I was blanking on what the other big topic was, is that Theo Epstein has stepped down in Chicago. And so the reports were that the way Theo feels is that 10 years is long enough for him anywhere he goes. So he doesn't want to be in a front office for more than 10 years. Well, he just finished his 9th year with the Cubs, and I guess what is being reported is that Theo felt like the Cubs were ready to start rebuilding because they're losing a lot of, they got a lot of players on the last years of their contract and things like that. And so he felt like right now was a good time to step down and allow the next GM to step in and kind of do what they want to do with the team now that his team and his era has kind of passed. So that's where it's tough, is because like part of you wants to say like, I don't know, I think he's jumping ship because he knows the team's not very good anymore. But then at the same time, like, he did leave a really good Red Sox team to go to the Cubs and made a good Cubs team. So I think that I guess I'll buy it. I will buy that he is leaving because that's how long he planned on staying and he's ready to pass it on to someone else. I have heard that he is also planning on stepping back and not getting another job, that he wants to just spend time with his family and decide what he wants to do at a later date.
Well, he is 46, so I don't know if he has kids.
He does. He has a family.
When my dad was 46, I was in high school. Right. So you get to see your kids do things and grow up easier, because I'm sure he's working like a psychopath and he works a lot of nights. One of my dogs is barking while they're sleeping.
That's right. We love dogs here.
I know, we do. They're both of them.
We'll have to get a Ollie and Winston t-shirt made for the podcast.
Absolutely, dude. It's just, I don't know. I mean, as a Cardinals fan, Theo Epstein did but didn't accomplish what he wanted, because he accomplished that World Series title that for both organizations, the Red Sox and Cubs, making him an absolute badass Hall of Famer. But he basically he built a dynasty in Chicago, but then blew it up to win that 1 year. And he did win that 1 year, but he lost a lot of guys that would still be key contributors to the team. And the Cubs aren't as bad as anyone ever gives them, like, says they were. Going into the year, a lot of people said the Cubs were going to be garbage, and I predicted them to win the Central. And they won the Central because they were the best team the whole year. But he made some pretty weird moves. I mean, he traded for Chapman, and then they used him to death because they knew they weren't going to re-sign him. So literally Joe Madden just used him every game for 2 innings and almost died. And then he almost blew the World Series in the 9th inning to Rajai Davis. And then they traded Gleyber Torres. They traded who they trade to Eloy Jimenez, who's an absolute guy who just destroys baseballs out in Chicago, in the other Chicago South Side. And then Dylan Cease for Jose Quintana. Signed Jason Hayward, which is a questionable move, because his big thing that I learned that he does is he takes the best players off of their biggest rival. So in this case, it was his big thing was, I'm going to take John Lackey and Jason Hayward, the 2 big Cardinal free agents, and I'm going to take them both. Because what that does is that adds to me a little bit, but more importantly, it subtracts from them. He did the same thing in Boston, signed guys like Johnny Damon, and just made some big signings like that and took them away from New York. So that's kind of what his goal was, and that's kind of, I think it's a really good strategy. But it did cost him a lot when you sign a guy like Jason Hayward, who's basically a glorified bench player in 2019, making like $20 million. I have a lot of thoughts on Theo Epstein. Obviously, he's incredibly successful, but they had the parts there to build an absolute dynasty. Sign a guy like Lester, Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Schwarber, and not even talking about their catcher, who's an absolute stud as well. I mean, they had a lot going on there, and won one, and never went to another. What?
The Marlins beat him in the first round.
Yeah, Marlins beat them in the first round. Whatever. They weren't good this year, but I'm talking about,
I just need to throw it out there.
Like, they had a 2016, 17, and 18 trend where they could have really done some big damage, and they won in 2016. And then 19, their whole team fell apart, so you can't blame them for that. when Javi, Chris Bryant, and Rizzo are all missing the entire month of September. Javi only came back against the Cardinals in their series because they wanted to use him off the bench just in case, but his hand was still broken.
I was going to say, I thought he was still broken.
Yeah, he had like a broken hand or wrist, something like that. And Rizzo was like literally like sick to death or something. He was just struggling. He was like in the hospital on and off, and he's trying to play through it. And that was when the Cardinals' famous sweep of them happened, St. Louis famous anyway. And it was just a crazy, just their whole team got hurt, so you can't blame them for that. But I don't know. It just seemed like you expected more from the team. If all 30 teams of baseball were to see that lineup in 2017 after they won the series in 16 and say, yeah, they're never going to do anything impressive ever again after 2016, you'd be confused because you're like, Jose Quintana, Yu Darvish, John Lester. They had John Lackey, Javier Baez, Jason Hayward, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber. Why can't I remember their catcher's name? Because he's like one of the better players. Wilson Contreras. Jesus. Yeah. Wilson Contreras.
Well, and I don't even think
Gleyber Torres was in their system before they traded for Chapman. Like, there was just so many guys, and they came out with one. He did his job. He won one. But I felt like they had more.
Well, and so what's interesting about that...
it's not over either, by the way. But
no.
They can still win.
I believe... I was watching MLB Network this morning, and I believe that that Theo was actually really humble, considering he's a guy that took two franchises that hadn't won in forever and turned them into World Series teams. He actually said, he goes,
42. He won 2 World Series.
Yeah. And so that was what they were talking about, is they said Theo did the same thing in Boston that he did in Chicago. He did the exact same thing. He showed up, built a team, won 1 World Series, and then the team just slowly got worse. And
well, did they win in 20? Was he there in 2007? Because they won in 4 and 7.
I don't know. I was trying to.
He maybe won 2. Anyways, regardless.
Well, but what Theo actually came out and said, which is kind of humble for a guy who accomplished, and he said, he goes, I figured out how to build a World Series winning team, but I couldn't figure out how to maintain a World Series winning team. So like he and I don't know, that's definitely not a quote. I totally paraphrased what I remember hearing. But basically he was saying that like he figured out a recipe that could win a World Series, but he couldn't figure out the recipe to consistently winning a World Series. And I think that was very much true to what we saw in both places that he showed up. And now Jed Hoyer was his little sidekick there in Chicago, who is now taking over as the GM.
He was in Boston too.
He was. So he is now going to be the GM for the Cubs and get his chance to do his thing. So as a Cubs fan and a baseball fan, and what does this mean for the Cubs? What do we think this is going to mean for the Cubs? We got to keep in mind that they have Bryant, Baez, Rizzo, and Schwarber all like ready to be free agents at the end of 2021. Contreras into 22, and then you got Darvish, who still has 3 years, and Hendricks, who still has 3 years. So you've got some of their core ready to leave, but then their pitchers are still here. I mean, you named all of these players when talking about how good they are. So that really goes to show you. I mean, that's in my opinion, that seems like too many players to pay. So I mean, what's going to happen here with this?
Bryant's out. Chris Bryant doesn't want to play in Chicago.
Chris Bryant apparently didn't want to play baseball at all last year because he batted like 186.
That's true, but he doesn't want to play in Chicago. He hasn't had fun in Chicago. He's been really pissed. He hated Joe Madden, apparently. Like they kind of butted heads.
Which is interesting because I remember when him and Rizzo were like best friends. Like they were like tight. And then it was like all of a sudden Bryant was like, I want out.
He's also been incredibly bitter over the fact that they sat him for those 13 games in the minor leagues to get an extra year on his contract, which as an organizational standpoint is the right move. But to Chris Bryant, obviously, it pissed him off. Because if you remember that spring training, he was the best player in all of spring training, period. And they sat him for those 13 days or whatever it was. And it gives him a full extra year. And the Cardinals did it to Carlson, but Carlson wasn't the best player in spring training. But it pissed him off. He sued the team. He lost an arbitration once to the Cubs instead of settling, which in my opinion is stupid. Why argue over $500,000 when you're talking about an MVP, a guy who won a World Series with you, and you're really gonna, as a team, go to court to tell this lawyer he's not as valuable as he thinks he is?
Yeah, that's
But
what's tough is
arbitration's
I've
always a
heard those
really
are ugly. They're ugly.
arbitration's always a really hard thing. But why the hell are you going to arbitration over your perennial MVP caliber player? I'm not saying he really is, but he won an MVP and he won a World Series for your team, literally
Rookie of the
making the
year,
final out.
three-time All-Star. I mean,
Exactly. He has a list, and you're going to go to court over like it was like $800,000. It's like pay the man. It's a lot of money, but it makes you look good for one. You don't piss him off more than you've already pissed him off, and let him go. And yeah, Chris Bryant didn't want to play at all last year, but apparently so did none of the Cubs. But their pitching decided to.
well,
But
and that was what was tough last year is that there was a lot of underlying things thinking that his wrist never got better because he got hurt early. He was hurt for part of the year with a wrist injury. And so there were some people that believed that he never really bounced back from that. And I think, but you also got to remember with him knowing his contract was up soon, he probably wanted to try and play and, put up some numbers to try and get that contract. But he ended up batting 206 with 4 home runs. So not good.
no.
Not a good year for Mr. Chris Bryant. But I am interested
Kyle
to see.
Schwarber it's good for the Kyle Schwarber's good for the Cubs if he can prove that he can actually hit bombs. Being a lefty DH would be really nice in Chicago if he can be more consistent because he can't play defense anywhere. He's garbage. So it'd be nice for them to already have that, even though he's becoming a free agent. But I don't think he's worth that much.
Well, and that's the other thing is so Kyle Schwarber batted 188 this year. The
Exactly.
entire team was terrible this year. And so that's what's really tough is all of their stars were rough. And they're all going into contract years at the end of next year. So they got another season to see what happens. But the question is, if you are Jed Hoyer now, we're putting on the Jed Hoyer shoes, so hopefully you brought them into your room before closing the door. Who are you keeping? How are you handling this? Because I mean the question is, are you completely rebuilding? Or are you keeping a couple players and trying to kind of cardinal it and retool, not rebuild?
Cubs they're going to cardinal it. They're not the Cubs of the 2000s. They're going to cardinal this thing and try to survive it. You're going to sign Rizzo. He's the fan favorite. He's been there a long time. He's the cancer story. He's just a great guy too. Rizzo's the guy. You sign Rizzo, you sign Javi because Javi's also the exciting guy that sells tickets. You let Bryant go because he doesn't really want to be there in the first place. And then Schwarber's kind of hit or miss, You'll have to base it off of is he going to be good next year? Because now...
And how much does he want?
Exactly. Because right now, I don't think he's worth that much. So if he wants anything, you leave him. I think the DH will definitely benefit a guy like him. But at the same time, I still don't know if he's that good. When he came up, said he was a guy... I literally said this, that he was a guy who could challenge the home run record because of just how he hit baseballs and Wrigley and stuff like that. Not like... just a single season, just because he could just roast baseballs, and he just turned out that he couldn't hit even close as anybody thought he would. Especially when his rookie year, when he hit a ball 9,000 feet off of Kevin Segrist in Game 4 of the postseason, I think it was, maybe Game 3. That landed on top of that billboard and right, like, oh my lord, it's the farthest ball I've ever seen hit in my life. And I don't know, I think the Cubs are still good. I think they have all the pieces there. I think going to contract year is actually probably good for them because guys like Chris Bryant are in between making $80 million and $180 million. Guys like Javi Baez are in between making $120 million and $240 million.
So this is
depending on 1 year.
A bit of a factor as well here. So I was just quickly looking this up while you were talking there. So Rizzo is 31. Brian is 28, Baez is 27, Schwarber's 27. So you've got 3 of the 4 guys heading into their just starting their prime. And then you could argue that Rizzo's kind of, heading off of his prime now. I get that Rizzo is your fan favorite. He's your face of your franchise. He's exactly what you want. But I think you also got to be careful there saying, our team on paper is not going to be very good. I'm not going to blow the budget to bring back Anthony Rizzo if he's not performing and he's 32.
I don't think Anthony Rizzo is going to cost that much. He's a Gold Glove first baseman who's got the leadership in the clubhouse. He's just the guy to me. I would take him in a second. I really like Anthony Rizzo, and I think he does a lot of things right. And I don't think you're going to have to break the bank for a guy like Anthony Rizzo at all because he's a guy who just does a lot of the things right and maybe not be the most flashy guy. He also hits anywhere in the lineup because Joe Madden literally batted him everywhere for whatever reason. And
I think that hurt him
And
too. I think
feel
that
like
it hurt him.
I agree. It hurts everybody. No one likes to move every day, but I'm a big fan. If I'm the Cubs, I'm signing Rizzo. That guy, I don't know this is a fact, so anyone baseball references, whatever you want to do. I think that guy in the last 5 years has just absolutely assaulted the Cardinals on a regular basis. And that's a good thing as a Cubs, like, because we all know what's happening in the NL Central. It's the Cardinals, and it's always the Cardinals and everybody else. Doesn't mean the Cardinals are the best team per se, but it's always the Cardinals and the argument of who's right there with them, if they're better or worse or whatever. The Cardinals are always first or second, right? So the team you have to look to challenge is the Cardinals. I personally think the Cubs are better than the Cardinals.
And the other thing is too, in all honesty, even if Bryant and Schwarber walk, they haven't really been the same players. Rizzo has been really solid every year. This was just a down year this year. Baez was trending to be an absolute stud in the major leagues. And so you definitely want to bring those two back. You've got, like I said earlier, you've got Darvish, you've got Hendricks for another 3 years. You know, you don't just let your team suck with pitching like that. But not to mention the fact that, like, right now as it sits, the NL Central's not very good. So it's like you don't have to have a powerhouse team to put yourself in the playoffs and be in contention.
Yeah. They got 4 good teams, no great teams.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean,
I actually think only 3 of them are good. I think Milwaukee's not good at all.
I don't think Milwaukee's good, and I don't think Cincinnati just lost their best pitcher now because they're not going to re-sign Bauer. And Cincinnati, I don't think Cincinnati can maintain over a full season. I don't think that they have the stuff to maintain over a full season.
I think Cincy's better than they played, personally. But I'm a big person into the whoever wins the offseason is never as good as they're going to be.
Right. I agree.
And guess what? They won the 2019 offseason, and they weren't as good as anyone expected. Like, a lot of people are just jumping all aboard they're going to win the Central bandwagon, and they weren't. And they were never going to. But I think they're better. Even if they lose Bauer, I still think they're better than people are going to give them credit for. They can compete because the whole division is good, and there's no one who's great. So
I just looked this up just for entertainment. I just literally baseball referenced the Cincinnati Reds this year. If I asked you, what do you think the highest batting average on? I don't know. I just pulled up their team here, and they have their position players. What do you think the highest batting average of a player on their team was last year?
I don't know, probably like 254. I mean, they can't hit at all. They're terrible.
The highest batting average of what I believe looks like starting players here. I don't know. This is very confusing the way they have it organized. Shogo.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's the.
Yeah, do you know what he batted?
The Asian guy. Probably like
245.
Yeah.
Highest batting average of the starting lineup, batted 245. No, I really like Luis Castillo. I really like Luis Castillo. I like Sonny Gray. I just don't know if I like anybody else on that team. I don't know. It's tough. What is Castellanos? Is he?
Winker hit 255.
Did he? Oh, he did. Okay, they didn't have he wasn't listed in my position player.
He's a D. It says him as DH.
There you go.
But yeah,
right, but so anyways,
that's the guy. I didn't remember his name, but that would have been my guess.
Yeah, so that's.
God, his slugging was under 300. he had 245 with an under 300 slugging. Dude, 1 triple, 6 doubles, and
so we can say that the NL Central has a lot of holes. So you don't need a stud team to win the Central. And
absolutely not. I've said that.
And so but I think the other thing is too, you got to keep in mind that, you know, the Cubs aren't a small market team. If they want to make a splash, they can make a splash, and they can fill in around Rizzo and Baez if they want to. The question is,
guys like Bryant leaving and stuff like that, who's making a boatload in arbitration.
I always do wonder though, when you've got a change of leadership here from Epstein to Hoyer, what the mindset difference will be. Will Hoyer continue what Epstein did and just, or is he going to say, I kind of want to do this my own way? I mean, that's always the tough part that I wonder, and I don't know that there's necessarily an answer. It's just, it'll be interesting to see how the Cubs play it in the next few years, knowing they have a new GM.
I got something to go with you.
Yes.
You said the Reds' highest batting average was 255 after we found out that DH. The Cardinals, if you take out Goldie, who had 304, so obviously they had one stud in Goldie. Their next highest average was 265, who was a free agent in Colton Wong. Their next highest hit 262, who was also a free agent in Yadier Molina. And their next highest hit 250, lower than Jesse Winker, who's our starting everyday shortstop, and Paul DeYoung. Basically, what I'm saying is Cardinals also can't hit. No one can hit in the Central. That's why I said that DeGrom had a closer argument than people thought he did, because the Darvish and Bauer pitched in the Central, and the Central just can't friggin' hit. No one can hit. We all suck. Like you said, Brian sucks too. Everyone sucks.
What's kind of interesting is I just looked this up as well, just for my pure reference. So Cincinnati and the Marlins had the same record this year. The Marlins, of their position players that they have listed, almost all of them batted higher than the highest batting average on Cincinnati. That's pretty crazy. Now you gotta keep in mind that a lot of these guys missed quite a few games, and so they don't have as many at bats and things like that. But it's just interesting. It's just interesting that a team that, like the Marlins, which had pretty good starting pitching and apparently some decent batting averages, comparatively speaking, finished with the exact same win-loss record. So, I mean, I guess that goes down to competition, though. When you're playing different competition, it does make a difference.
Well, both their divisions were pretty equal. And the AL Central was better than the AL East. Not much, though. But
yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything else to talk about baseball?
Minus 41 run differential. Their pitching wasn't that good.
The Marlins?
At 304?
Well, you got to keep in mind that they gave up like 20-something runs to the Braves in that one game. So if you remove that one game, it's not that bad.
Like the Cardinals in two less games, to be fair. But the Cardinals are pitching allowed 70 less, 75 less runs. 75 less runs than Miami.
Yeah. I mean, you got to keep in mind here that the Marlins starting pitchers that were good were not. Pablo Lopez pitched in 11 games. Sandy pitched in 7. Sixto pitched in 7. Eliezer Hernandez pitched in 6. Those were 4 of your best starting pitchers.
How do you pronounce your GM's last name?
The new one?
Yeah.
I've heard it like a million times recently, and I've now blanked.
It's just Ang.
Is it? Sure.
There's a video of her pronouncing her own name on YouTube.
Oh, that's good.
And I wanted to know, and it's just like ANG.
Gotcha.
Ang.
Yeah, I heard it like a million times, but then you put me on the spot, and I totally blanked. Yeah, so I mean, it's just interesting to see how it plays out. There's a lot of variables this season too. I mean, you gotta keep in mind that the Marlins, with their runs given up as well, I mean, they had that 20-something runs that the Braves scored against them, and they had like half their pitching staff was claimed off waivers for like a week. So it's like, they were literally pitching bullpen games with waiver wire bullpen pitchers, and so it was a rough pitching.
Yeah, it's so hard to like figure this stuff out, because if you look at it, you're sitting here, you can say whatever you want about certain teams or certain players and how they pitched or how they performed, and it's over here you're going, a guy like Jack Flaherty, right?
Rough this year.
But was he though? Because he allowed 9 in less than 1 inning pitch. And the rest of the year he had a ball, he had just above a 3.
I don't know. When I watched Jack Flaherty pitch this year, though, something just didn't look right. Like, he didn't look like, I don't know if he was like,
he wasn't
dealing with stuff. Like, he just didn't.
The issue was he was throwing so many pitches because he was not striking people out at the same rate.
Yeah, I just wonder if after the great season he had in 2019, if there was some fatigue carrying over there into 2020.
I think he'll be fine overall because he's still obviously 25.
Yeah, and I don't know that long term there's any issues. I think that there definitely seem to be something not quite right with him this year, though. I don't know if it was in his head or in his body, but something wasn't quite there for him in 2020.
He had a weird couple things. So he had a couple starts moved up due to rain the night before, which kind of blows. And he allowed the 9 in less than one in like one. I think it was like literally 2/3. And in a shortened season, that just destroys ERAs.
Yeah.
So I think,
and my opinions of him was based off of what I saw. I don't. A lot of players I throw out their stats. A lot of the players I'm throwing out their stats this year because good or bad, it's hard to say. I mean, look at Christian Yelich this year. The guy was a stud the last 2 seasons before, and he batted like 100 this year.
In his pocket. The only reason he didn't win it was because he broke his ankle or knee the last month of September, and he still almost won it. And
you could have argued he still was the MVP because,
and you're sitting there, and then you're over here, garbage.
Yeah, I don't know.
Horrific.
All right, well, I don't have anything else for baseball. You got anything else? Any final thoughts you want to add here?
Anyone get signed?
No, not really. That's what's kind of crazy is the off season's moving kind of slow, which I guess I'm not really surprised.
Okay, quick thing.
Yes.
Last thing, because the one big talk about the MLB is Francisco Lindor. No really need to discuss it, but where is he going? Is he staying? Or if he's going, where is he going?
Oh, okay. So we can play this little where's he?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean,
we don't need to have a full-on conversation, but where's he going to go?
And I don't mind having the conversation. I think the tough part is that I think that we even addressed it last week is that Lindor would fit on every major league team. And so where he ends up is going to be really, really tough. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's a really hard thing to call. I'm not 100% sure who they're even referencing as like the leaders for that.
There really isn't one.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see a team make a play there. I guess, I mean, my first initial thought is, that it's going to be a team that wants to make a big splash this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like, the Mets somehow pull it out of their pocket, but I don't know if they have the players to get him. And so then
they don't, because
then
when you traded all their prospects to
so then when you play
Seattle.
into who's got the players, I mean, sure, I love if the Marlins would get him. That would be awesome, but what would I have to give up for? Do I want to give up what I have to give up for him when I truthfully don't really know if I believe the Marlins are ready yet? I think that they had a good shortened season, but I don't think they're ready for a full season.
Oh yeah, shortened season helped them.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Does a Dodgers pull it off, and then they somehow shift some people around, maybe Seager to third or something like that? Do the Dodgers pull it off to replace Turner over at third? I don't know. I mean, that's what's really tough. Is there's a lot of suitors, but what is it that Cleveland's looking for?
All the prospects. So, do you have any team like just one team? And that can include the Indians. What do you think is going?
Oh man. Man. That's a really, really tough.
Yeah, considering everyone's.
I know, and
everyone's called them.
Yeah,
I'm going Cleveland.
You think he's gonna stay?
I mean, I think he'll stay for at least 2.5 months.
Okay, well, I could see that. I could see him staying until the trade deadline. I could see that. Because I think that this offseason is going to move so slow that the trade market doesn't really pick up too.
Yeah. So I think the couple teams that are suitors are one's the Mets, who will struggle. One's the Reds, who have a lot of prospects. The Cardinals and the Dodgers are big. The main reason I say the Cardinals is because the Cardinals and Cleveland have a massive trade history. They've made like 15 trades over the last 15 years or something stupid. From big to small, any of them mattered. It's just crazy, the Cardinals and Cleveland. If it doesn't matter if they're swapping nobodies, they just make trades. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so that's the only reason why I think the Cardinals are too boring to make a splash, even though Lindor is a guy who would fit in St. Louis very well.
I just can't help
But
but think that the Dodgers, just
they
because they
won't
have
win.
so many pitchers and they've shown they're not afraid to move them. And so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they try to pull off something crazy like that. But you never know. Maybe they take the foot off the
Cleveland's
gas
just
a
trying to
little bit.
rebuild their stock because they can't sign these guys, and they're another team. It's another team like Oakland. They're another team, that just can't spend all the money, and like Tampa that just can't spend all the money all the time. And and they've proved it by trading guys like Bauer and Kluber, and they just still easily survive.
Clevenger.
Clevenger, who just signed a 2-year deal, but he's losing one of them to Tommy John, and yeah, just
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see where he goes. And a team like the Marlins, who I'd love to see him go to, if the Marlins play it right, they're not going to really do anything until the trade deadline, because you want to see, is this team going to show up and still play? I mean, you're going to, obviously you might add some smaller pieces, but you're really not going to make any big splash until you get to the trade deadline of next season and say, yeah, we're actually a good team, or it's not quite working out like it has in the past.
this is gonna be funny. What will the Cardinals? There's a thing. What will the Cardinals do? And it says what they could do: sign George Springer, DJ LeMahieu, and Nelson Cruz as a DH. What they will do: sign Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, and Jonathan Scope. And if that isn't textbook Cardinal offseason, I don't know what is.
Absolutely. Except instead of Jonathan Scope, I think I'd put a bullpen arm. Because I think Jonathan Scope doesn't even fit how the Cardinals like players. So we'll see though.
And he's just not good. But they actually have when I'm going through this thing, what will teams do? And I'm trying to figure out real fast what they're actually like, who do they have Lindor going to? And they actually have him going to sorry, I'm just trying to read everything real quick. They got him going to New York, the Mets.
Oh, interesting. Does it say anything about what the Mets would give up?
Let me see.
So it is interesting. Lindor's another player that
Ahmad Rosario, Andres Jimenez, Brandon Nimmo, or Doc Smith.
Interesting.
Dom Smith. I said Doc Smith. Dom Smith.
Lindor is another guy who did struggle in this shortened season a little bit, but he did play.
Did he?
60 games. He batted 258, and for him that was rough.
Oh yeah, that's rough for him.
I mean, he's a 280 hitter.
Perennial All-Star MVP type of candidate, best shortstop in the game candidate type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been top 20.
Let's see what they had the Marlins doing.
Signing toilet paper and
Marlins. What they could do: sign George Springer and DJ LeMahieu. Sounds like the Cardinals. What they will do: sign Pedro Baez and Mike Zunino.
Okay, whatever. That's about what I expected.
Pedro Baez is the veteran bullpen guy from the Dodgers. So that sounds good to me if I'm a Marlin fan who doesn't really have any bullpen that I know of.
And Zunino is a catcher if you don't believe in Alfaro as your catcher. So,
yeah, Zunino is to provide a challenge to the always frustrating Jorge Alfaro.
So that'll be interesting.